Let's set the scene. It's race day. You get into your car, you start your engine, and you pull up to the track. 3, 2, 1, go. You stay in first gear and end up over revving your car before the engine eventually blows. Your race is done. Your opposition, on the other hand, they started their engine well before the race started. They allowed their engine and all the parts of the car to go through the motions before the race. They gradually changed through their gears and ended up winning the race. Hey, I'm Avi, and if you're new around here, I'm going to help you win in the gym so you can win in life. Now, out of that intro, who would you rather be, the winner or the loser? The winner, they took all the necessary precautions to warm up their engine and warm up their car before the race even started. That allowed them to actually win the race and set that world record. A warm-up is one of the most beneficial investments of time that will prime you to lift some weights. It primes your tissues before you actually place load over them and ask them to exert even more force, which isn't only great for performance, but it's actually very, very good for injury resilience and injury prevention. But what are some goals of a warm-up? The first goal, we want to prime our tissues for movement. And the second goal, we want to prime our central nervous system for load, which all starts with raising our body temperature. Now we can do this in many ways, and this is often going to be that sort of entry level into the warm-up. You can start by walking on a treadmill, you can cycle on a bike, you can go on a rowing machine, whatever. There's cardio machines in your gym. Let's start to make use of those, or you can just go for a walk outside or walk to the gym. You catch my drift. I also like to use this time to focus on the session and mentally zone in. After this part of the warm-up, I'd usually throw in some foam rolling if I needed it for that day. Oftentimes my clients, they like it. They like foam rolling in some cases. It makes them feel good. On the other hand, some of them don't care for it and they'll go straight into the next part of the warm-up. But moral of the story is, if you need it, this is the time to do it. The next part of the warm-up is all about mobility. Now let's start by defining what mobility is. Mobility is your ability to move through your range of motion. Now, what is range of motion? Range of motion is the capability of a joint to go through its complete spectrum of movements. And we can achieve this in two ways, that is actively or passively. Now, we want to think of passive range of motion as the range of motion that a joint can achieve when someone's moving that joint for you. So let's say you're completely relaxed on the bed, someone picks up your arm and they'll sort of move your elbow around. You'll be all floppy, but that is your passive range of motion. It's the actual range of motion that joint can tolerate, okay? And then defining active range of motion now. Active range of motion is the range of motion that can be achieved when opposing muscles contract and relax, resulting in joint movement. You're going to take your arm and you're going to bring it here. What's happening there is the bicep is contracting and the tricep is relaxing, and then we go the other way. The tricep is contracting and the bicep is relaxing. That's your active range of motion. The mobility exercises that we can perform is something that, to be honest, you're going to benefit from, whether you're squatting, you're deadlifting, you're benching, whatever you're doing for that day. These 5 movements are movements that you can actually perform in your workout. To perform a cat camel, you're going to assume a quadruped position. So that's wrists in line with shoulders and hips in line with knees. Next, you're going to smoothly transition between flexion and extension from the hips all the way through to the top of the head. Between flexion and extension is where you'll find neutral, which is going to be pretty important for the exercises that are to come for the rest of the session. The next exercise is the cat camel on elbows, which is exactly the same, except we're performing it on our elbows. So we want to align the elbow with the shoulder. Next up, we've got a Scapula Press Up. So the objective here is to distinguish between shoulder motion and spinal motion. It's performed from a press up position, so the spine is going to remain nice and neutral throughout. A nice cue that I like to use for these is trap pencils underneath your armpits, so it's going to keep the shoulders nice and retracted and depressed. Then we have the adductor stretch with thoracic rotation. What you're going to do here is place the foot out to the side in line with the opposing knee. You're going to place a hand in line with the knee. You're going to take the opposing elbow, bring it towards the elbow, and then rotate the other way towards the ceiling from the mid to the upper back. A nice cue we can think of here is to draw a bow and arrow. Next up, we're going to go into some hip controlled articular rotations. To start, you're going to perform a few cat camels to find that neutral position. So remember, between flexion and extension is neutral. Next up, you're going to perform a few scapular presses, just so you can make sure you're distinguishing between any shoulder and spinal motion, and to find the most stable position for the shoulders as well. Next up, you're going to bring a heel towards the hip, just to feel some tension in that hamstring, and then we're going to be drawing circles with the knee whilst motioning from the ball and socket joint of the hip. So you're going to go 10 in one direction, 10 in the other, and you're going to resist any motion from the spine, as the objective of this exercise is to distinguish between spinal and hip motion. The goal with the warm-up so far is to just prime your body to move in an environment that actually doesn't require much thought. If anything, it's just reminding you how to use your body and move. After mobility, we'd look at potentiation, otherwise known as activation. Post-activation potentiation is a theory that implies that the contractile history of a muscle influences the mechanical performance of subsequent muscle contractions. The goal here is to continue to tick off the two goals of the warm-up, which is 1, to prime our tissues for movement, and 2, to get our central nervous system used to firing some force, for what's to come. And 2 simple exercises we can perform here are band pull-aparts and band walks. To perform a band walk, you're going to place a resistance band around the feet, or you can go around the ankles or the knees. Just bear in mind that the further away you go from the hip, the more difficult these become. You're going to take a ready stance, so it's the position that you take up before, let's say, you'd run after a football or something, and then from there, from that nice low position, you're going to step to the side for about 10 reps, and then you're going to step back for another 10. Note, I do not take massive steps with this. It's nice controlled ones where all the intent is on my hip and I can feel my glutes getting a nice burn. To perform a band pull apart, you're going to grab a longer resistance band, start with your fists in line with your shoulders, and you're going to motion from the shoulders to pull the band apart. A nice little tip for this is to keep that tension through your arm, so you're going to think of reaching your arms away from you, and also try not to let the resistance band bend your wrists, so keep a nice strong grip. And again, with these 2 exercises, you can use them whether you're squatting, deadlifting, benching. They're all going to be of some use. Now, as we go through this warm-up, I don't want you to think this is the blueprint, this is what you're going to do all the time. I want you to experiment with it, add things if you want, remove things if you want. This is just a nice skeleton for you to play with. Next, we want to look at core stability exercises. Professor McGill found through his research in his lab that the muscles of the core are better trained in exercises such as a plank as opposed to a sit-up. In a particular experiment, he measured the electrical activity on the muscles of the core in a plank versus a sit-up. The electrodes were placed on the individual when they're doing a sit-up. Not much activity went on. Electrodes were placed on the individual during a plank. That thing lit up. When it comes to exercise and moving under load, our spine is going to be most resilient when in a neutral position, or in other instances when the spine is locked in position and there's no motion under load. Any deviation outside of neutral or from this fixed position is going to migrate stress to the spine, which is not where we want it, and that can lead to further issues down the line. We want to be able to train the musculature of the core to be able to enjoy movement. As simple as that. And how do we train the body to enjoy movement? We use our core stability exercises during the warm-up. Again, it's priming you for movement of what's to come. Think of every exercise as a core movement. This is going to be the sort of entry level, the things that you do during your core stability portion of your warm-up. That's where you start, and then you go into a squat, which is further down the line. And another way in which we can prevent injuries from happening is by learning to move well. But those videos are coming later on down the line, so be sure to subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell, like this video. It's coming. Core exercises in our warm-up need to be very efficient, okay? We can't waste our energy and expend our energy warming up when we should be saving that for the main work in the session. And some examples of exercises which we can perform during a warm-up are the bird dog, the front plank, and the side bridge. To perform a front plank, from a neutral position, drop down to your elbows, walk your knees back and lift your knees off the ground by engaging your hips. Note that you don't want to go too far back so that you lose neutral. We're going to keep neutral throughout this whole hold, and the hips and the shoulders are working to allow you to stay nice and stable. Also, make sure to keep pressing away from the ground, and we're going to revisit that cue that we met earlier, which is to keep some pencils tucked underneath your armpits. Further to that, keep some breath going through your belly, keep on breathing and try not to hold your breath throughout this. To perform a side bridge, you're going to get into a side lying position, elbow roughly somewhere underneath the shoulder. You're going to bridge forward from the hips. So if you note, my hips are coming forward and not towards the ceiling. You can either hold that position, or if you want to make it a bit harder, extend your legs and have a nice wide base of support. And if you want to make things even more difficult by adding an element of anti-rotation into your core work, then we can perform a rolling side plank. To perform these, you're going to start in a front plank position, except your arms are going to be crossed over. From there, you're going to move as one unit, keep that rib cage locked over the hips, and roll into the side plank position. When you're done there, rotate back to the middle and then go to the other side. It's a bit tougher, but that is a side plank. To perform a bird dog, you want to assume a quadruped position. From there, find a neutral spine and find a nice pressed away position. From there, you're going to simultaneously motion from the hip and the shoulder. You're going to hold that position, and then after, let's say 10 seconds, if we're looking for a 3-2-1 rep scheme, which I'll explain in a second, you're going to sweep, so motion in, and then go back out and hold for another 10 seconds. Perform the amount of reps that you're working for, and the key with this, ladies and gentlemen, is not to motion at all through the spine. So we want to maintain that nice stable position. Imagine a glass of water on your back. You would not want that to spill throughout any point in this exercise. So when we think of some of the most elite strength athletes in the world, we look at the Russians. The Russians as a nation hold the most weightlifting accolades ever. And in their approach to weightlifting and just training in general, the goal is to always train to a point where they are never fatigued, but they are still presented with some form of a challenge that's going to allow them to adapt and continue to progress. So for beginners, in regards to how we structure the core workout or the core exercises, I'd recommend starting with a Russian reverse descending pyramid, which goes something like 3 reps, 2 reps, and 1 rep. So 1 rep represents a 10-second hold. So for 3 reps, you'd hold 10 seconds, have a mini break, 10 seconds, mini break, 10 seconds. You'd get up, prepare yourself for the second set. 2 reps will be 10 seconds, rest 10 seconds, get up, prepare yourself for the next set, and the final rep will be just 1 10-second hold. And you can progress this to a 4-3-2 and a 5-3-1, but again, you're going to be spending too much time in this portion of the warm-up. That will take a while to get completed if you're doing a front plank, a side bridge, and a bird dog. I don't want you doing that. What I do want you to do instead is, once you get comfortable with a 3-2-1, then go straight to 20-second hold. Easy. If that's too easy, go for a 30-second hold. If that's too easy, 40 seconds, 50 seconds. Just find that sweet spot where you feel like you're primed and ready to go for what's to come later in the session. So this warm-up is quite general. As I said earlier, I don't want you to copy it exact for exact. Just do what feels right for you, and feel free to add to it, feel free to take away from it, but it's going to be a pretty good structure for most people. Now bear in mind, if you do have injuries and you're someone that looks at Instagram and they're like, oh, I got a bit of a shoulder issue and I've seen these corrective exercises on this post, go to a clinician, do yourself a favor, because you never know, you might be doing yourself more harm than good. With that being said, if you've seen any exercises here that you feel fit that bill, that might be a good one for my shoulders that I've always had issues with, go to a clinician first. I'm not a clinician, I'm a personal trainer. So in total, to complete all of that, it should take you a maximum of between 10 to 15 minutes. 15 minutes is the very upper limit. If there's anything in the video that you've seen today that you want to know more about, or you have any training related questions, then don't be afraid to shoot me a DM over on Instagram, or you can just leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, then please do not forget to like, comment and subscribe. Check out my videos over on the right. I hope I'm pointing in the right way. If not, check out my socials down below, and I shall catch you in the next video.